The morning of June 15th started like any other summer day in the quiet suburb of Cedar Park, just outside Austin, Texas. 3-year-old Emma woke up excited because her grandmother, Maria, had promised to make her favorite breakfast, chocolate chip pancakes with strawberries arranged in a smiley face. Emma's dark curls bounced as she ran down the stairs of her grandmother's cozy 2-story house, her pink pajamas decorated with dancing unicorns still wrinkled from sleep. "Abuela, abuela," she called out in her tiny voice, mixing the Spanish word for grandmother with her enthusiastic English. Maria smiled from the kitchen, her weathered hands already busy at the stove. At 68 years old, Maria had raised 4 children of her own and now delighted in spoiling her first grandchild every chance she got. After breakfast, Emma begged to play outside. The June weather was perfect, warm but not yet scorching, with a gentle breeze that made the wind chimes on the porch sing their metallic melody. Maria settled into her favorite wicker chair on the front porch with her knitting, keeping a watchful eye as Emma chased butterflies across the freshly mowed lawn. The little girl's laughter was infectious, pure joy incarnate as she twirled and danced, trying to catch the yellow and orange butterflies that seemed to tease her with their effortless flight. "Look, abuela, this one likes me," Emma squealed, standing perfectly still as a butterfly landed momentarily on her outstretched finger before fluttering away. Maria chuckled, her needles clicking rhythmically as she worked on a new blanket. Next door, the house stood empty. The elderly couple who lived there had left 3 days earlier for a vacation in Colorado, visiting their daughter and new grandson. They had asked Maria to keep an eye on the place, which she'd gladly agreed to do. Everything seemed peaceful and normal in their quiet neighborhood where everyone knew everyone else, where children rode bikes freely, and where crime was something people saw on television, not in their own backyards. That peaceful illusion shattered at approximately 2:37 p.m. Officer Jake, a 7-year veteran of the Austin Police Department, received a call about a possible break-in at the residence. A neighbor 2 houses down had noticed the back gate standing open and what looked like a broken window. Responded immediately, his K-9 partner Rex sitting alert in the specially designed compartment in the back of his patrol SUV. Rex was a 4-year-old German Shepherd, 75 pounds of muscle and training, certified in narcotics detection and suspect apprehension. His black and tan coat gleamed in the sunlight as released him from the vehicle. Rex commanded in German, the language used for all of Rex's training commands. The dog immediately came to heel, his brown eyes focused intently on his handler, waiting for direction. Attached the lead and approached the property with Rex moving in perfect synchronization beside him. Emma noticed the police car immediately. Her eyes went wide with excitement. She loved trucks and cars, and police cars were the best of all with their exciting lights and sirens. When she spotted the large dog emerging from the vehicle, her 3-year-old heart nearly exploded with joy. "Abuela, abuela, look, a puppy, a big puppy," she shouted, already moving toward the white picket fence that separated her grandmother's property from the sidewalk. Maria looked up from her knitting, saw the police officer and his dog, and immediately stood up. Something felt wrong. She started moving toward Emma, but her arthritic knees slowed her down. "Emma, stay in the yard, don't go near the fence." But Emma was already at the fence line, her small hands gripping the white wooden slats, standing on her tiptoes to get a better view. Rex was the biggest, most beautiful dog she had ever seen. At home, her parents had always said she was too young for a pet, that maybe when she was older they could get a small dog. But this magnificent creature next door looked like the dogs she'd seen in her storybooks, strong, powerful, like a wolf or a prince's loyal companion. Officer was focused on the house, examining the broken window at the back. It appeared someone had indeed tried to break in, though whether they'd succeeded in entering was unclear. He needed to do a perimeter check before calling for backup. Rex was trained for exactly this kind of work, detecting the presence of intruders, finding hidden suspects, alerting to danger. Rex, such, commanded Search. He loosened the lead slightly, allowing Rex more freedom to move and investigate. The dog's nose went to work immediately, sniffing along the fence line, checking for any scent trails that might indicate where a suspect had gone. That's when fate took its cruel turn. Rex's search pattern brought him closer to the property line where Emma stood watching. The little girl, seeing the dog approaching, could contain her excitement no longer. "Hi, puppy, hi, do you want to be my friend?" she called out in her sweet, high-pitched voice. Maria was halfway across the yard now, moving as fast as her old legs could carry her. "Emma, get back from there right now." But Emma, in her innocent enthusiasm, did something that would haunt everyone involved for years to come. She noticed that the gate between the properties, a small decorative gate that the neighbors sometimes used for easy access when borrowing tools or cups of sugar, was slightly ajar. In her 3-year-old logic, if the gate was open, she could go pet the beautiful dog. She pushed the gate open and took 3 running steps toward Rex, her arms outstretched, her face beaming with pure joy. "Puppy, come here, puppy." Rex's training kicked in instantaneously. A small figure rushing toward him with arms raised. His years of conditioning identified this as a potential threat. He'd been trained to stop suspects from fleeing, to protect his handler from attack, to react with speed and decisive action. His stress levels, already elevated from weeks of overwork that no one had properly identified, made his response even more aggressive than it might have otherwise been. Everything happened in less than 3 seconds. Rex lunged forward with explosive force, his powerful jaws opening wide. Emma's joyful expression transformed into confusion, then terror. The dog's teeth caught her right arm just above the elbow, the force of his bite lifting the tiny girl off her feet. His jaws clenched down with approximately 300 pounds of pressure per square inch, enough force to crack bones. Emma's scream was primal, a sound of pure agony and terror that would echo in the nightmares of everyone who heard it. Blood spurted from the puncture wounds, soaking through her yellow t-shirt with the cartoon sun on it, dripping onto the grass below. "Rex, AUS, AUS!" screamed the release command, sprinting toward his dog in absolute horror. Rex released immediately, backing away, but the damage was done. Emma crumpled to the ground, her small body shaking, her screams now mixed with gasping sobs. Maria reached her granddaughter seconds later, scooping the bleeding child into her arms, her own screams joining Emma's. "Me, someone call 911, please someone help us," was already on his radio, his hands shaking so badly he could barely press the button. "Officer needs assistance. Child injured by K9. I need an ambulance at 847 Maple Drive immediately. 3-year-old female, severe bite wounds to right arm, heavy bleeding." His voice cracked on the last words. Neighbors poured out of their houses, drawn by the screams. Mrs. from across the street, a retired nurse, ran over with towels and began applying pressure to Emma's wounds while they waited for the ambulance. The little girl's screams had reduced to whimpers, her face pale, her body going into shock. "Stay with me, baby. Stay with Abuela," Maria sobbed, rocking back and forth with Emma in her arms, her own clothes now soaked with her granddaughter's blood. Officer secured Rex in his vehicle, the dog now calm but confused, packing in the compartment. Leaned against his SUV, his legs barely able to hold him up. In 7 years of police work through dangerous arrests and violent confrontations, he had never felt terror like this. What had he done? What had his partner done? That wasn't a suspect or a criminal. That was a baby, a little girl who just wanted to pet a dog. The ambulance arrived in 4 minutes, though it felt like hours. Paramedics worked quickly, starting an IV, wrapping Emma's mangled arm, checking her vital signs. Her pulse was rapid, her blood pressure dropping. They needed to get her to the trauma center immediately. As they loaded Emma into the ambulance, her eyes, glazed with shock and pain, found Officer's face. She whimpered one word that would stay with him forever. "Why? The ambulance doors slammed shut, sirens wailing as it sped away. Maria climbed in beside her granddaughter, praying in Spanish through her tears, stood alone on the blood-stained grass, watching the ambulance disappear, knowing that in those few terrible seconds, multiple lives had been irrevocably changed. By the time Emma's parents and Sophia received the frantic call and rushed to the hospital, their daughter was already in emergency surgery. As the sun set on that June evening, casting long shadows across Cedar Park, nobody yet understood the full extent of what had been set in motion. This wasn't just a tragic accident. It was the beginning of a legal battle, a community divided, and ultimately, a story of courage that would capture the nation's attention. But first, Emma had to survive. The fluorescent lights of Dell Children's Medical Center's pediatric intensive care unit hummed with an unforgiving brightness that made everything feel surreal. Sat with his head in his hands, his work shirt still covered in dried paint from the construction job he'd abandoned mid-shift when he got the call. Beside him, Sophia pressed a crumpled tissue to her face, her eyes so swollen from crying that she could barely see. They'd been in this waiting room for 6 hours, while surgeons worked to save their daughter's arm. Doctor finally emerged through the double doors at 9:47 p.m., still wearing her surgical scrubs, a tired expression etched across her face. And Sophia jumped to their feet, clutching each other's hands so tightly their knuckles turned white. "Your daughter is stable," Doctor said first, knowing that parents needed to hear those words before anything else. Both parents released breaths they didn't know they'd been holding. "But I need to be honest with you about the extent of her injuries." The doctor led them to a private consultation room and pulled up images on a computer screen. Rex's bite created 4 major puncture wounds and several lacerations on Emma's right arm. 2 of his canine teeth penetrated deeply, damaging the brachial artery, which is why there was so much blood loss. "We've repaired that successfully." She paused, her expression growing more grave. "However, the radial nerve, one of the major nerves that controls hand and finger movement, sustained significant trauma. We've done our best to repair it, but nerves are unpredictable." "What does that mean?" Sophia whispered, though she was terrified of the answer. "It means Emma may never regain full function of her right hand. She'll need extensive physical therapy, possibly additional surgeries as she grows, and there's a real possibility of permanent partial paralysis in her fingers and wrist." Doctor's voice was gentle but unflinchingly honest. "The next 72 hours are critical. We're watching for infection, which is a serious concern with animal bites. Dog mouths carry numerous bacteria that can cause severe complications." His legs gave out and he collapsed into a chair. His little girl, his precious Emma, who loved to draw pictures and play with dolls, might never use her hand properly again. Sophia stood frozen, processing information that seemed impossible to accept. "Can we see her?" Sophia finally managed to ask. "Yes, but prepare yourselves. She's sedated and on several monitors. She looks fragile right now." Nothing could have prepared them for the sight of their daughter in that hospital bed. Emma looked impossibly small against the white sheets, her tiny body connected to machines that beeped and whirred with mechanical precision. Her right arm, wrapped in layers of bandages from shoulder to fingertips, was elevated and secured. An IV drip fed medication into her left hand. Her face, usually animated with joy and mischief, was pale and still. Sophia approached the bed as if Emma might shatter like glass. She gently stroked her daughter's dark curls, the only part of her that looked normal, that looked like the little girl who had left for Grandma's house that morning, full of life and laughter. "'S here, baby, and are right here." Stood at the foot of the bed, silent tears streaming down his face. He was a man who prided himself on protecting his family, on being strong, on keeping them safe. And he had failed. He hadn't been there. He couldn't protect his daughter from what happened. The helplessness crushed him. Maria arrived an hour later, having finally been released by the police who needed her statement about the incident. She looked 10 years older than she had that morning, the weight of guilt and grief aging her before their eyes. "I should have been faster," she kept repeating. "I saw her going to the gate. I tried to stop her, but I wasn't fast enough." "This isn't your fault," said, embracing his mother, but his words rang hollow. Everyone was looking for someone to blame, including themselves. The first night was the longest of their lives. Emma woke briefly around 3 a.m., disoriented and in pain despite the medication. Her eyes, wide with fear and confusion, darted around the unfamiliar room. When she tried to move her right arm and couldn't, when she saw the bandages and felt the pain, she began to scream. Not the physical pain screams from the attack, but something worse. These were screams of terror, of a child's mind trying to process trauma it was never meant to experience. The doggy is here, make it go away," she shrieked, her small body thrashing despite the IVs and monitors. "Don't let it get me. Please, don't let it get me." Nurses rushed in to administer additional sedatives while Sophia climbed carefully into the hospital bed, wrapping herself around her daughter. "There's no dog here, me. You're safe. Has you. Nothing can hurt you here." But Emma's eyes saw things that weren't there. In her traumatized mind, Rex was everywhere under the bed, in the shadows, waiting to attack again. It took 20 minutes to calm her down, and when she finally slipped back into medicated sleep, her little body still twitched and whimpered. Dr. Sarah, a child psychologist specializing in trauma, visited on the second day. She spent an hour with and Sophia, explaining what they were facing. "Physical wounds heal," doctor said carefully, "but psychological trauma in children this young can fundamentally alter their development. Emma's brain is still forming critical pathways, and this experience has been profoundly damaging. She'll likely develop post-traumatic stress disorder. We're already seeing signs, the flashbacks, the night terrors, the hypervigilance." "What can we do?" asked, desperate for any path forward. "Long-term therapy, consistency, patience, and understanding that Emma may not be the same child she was before. That's not meant to scare you, but to prepare you. Recovery from this kind of trauma is a marathon, not a sprint." By the fourth day, when Emma was finally stable enough to be moved from the ICU to a regular pediatric room, the full scope of their new reality began to crystallize. The hospital's billing department provided an initial estimate, $47,000 for the emergency surgery and 4-day hospital stay. That didn't include the upcoming physical therapy, the follow-up surgeries, the psychological counseling, or the medications Emma would need. And Sophia had basic health insurance through his construction company, but it covered only 60% after a $5,000 deductible. Sophia worked part-time at a center, a job she would now have to quit to care for Emma full-time. Their savings account held exactly $3,200, money they'd been carefully accumulating for a down payment on their first house. "We'll figure it out," said, though he had no idea how. "We'll get second jobs, we'll borrow money, we'll do whatever it takes." But money was only one problem. When Emma was finally discharged after a week in the hospital, she refused to leave the car when they arrived home. She screamed that the outside wasn't safe, that the doggy might be there. It took 2 hours of coaxing before Sophia could carry her inside, and even then, Emma insisted every window be covered with blankets so she couldn't see outside. The once outgoing toddler who had loved playground visits and playing with neighborhood children now refused to leave her bedroom. She wouldn't sleep alone, requiring both parents to be in the room with her. When she did sleep, nightmares jolted her awake every few hours, screaming about teeth and blood and pain. A week after coming home, Sophia tried to take Emma to her first physical therapy appointment. The route required driving past a park where several people were walking their dogs, when Emma spotted a golden retriever, a breed known for gentleness. She began screaming so violently that she hyperventilated and vomited. Sophia had to pull over and call to come help them. "I can't do this," Sophia sobbed to her husband that night after Emma finally fell into an exhausted sleep. "I can't watch our baby suffer like this. She's terrified of everything. She won't eat. She won't play. It's like someone took our Emma away and left this frightened shell." Held his wife as she cried, but he had no comforting words. He was barely holding himself together. At work, he made mistakes, dangerous mistakes on a construction site, because his mind was constantly with his daughter. His supervisor had already warned him twice. 2 weeks after the attack, was scrolling through social media when he saw that the story had made the local news. The headline read, "Police K9 attacks toddler in Cedar Park. Family seeks answers." The comments section was half the people expressed sympathy for Emma, calling for the dog to be put down and the officer to be fired. The other half defended Rex, an officer, saying Emma shouldn't have approached a working police dog, that her grandmother should have controlled her better, that the family was probably just looking for a lawsuit payday. Felt rage boil up inside him. These strangers who knew nothing about their suffering, nothing about their daughter's screams in the night, had the audacity to blame a 3-year-old child. He wanted to respond, to defend Emma, but Sophia stopped him. "It won't help," she said quietly. "Nothing we say will change their minds." But the comments gnawed at him. One person wrote, "Parents these days don't teach their kids boundaries. The dog was just doing its job." Another, "This is a money grab. They'll probably sue and get rich off this." Rich, they couldn't afford Emma's medication, had started skipping lunch at work to save money. Sophia had sold her grandmother's jewelry, her most treasured possessions, to pay for the first 2 weeks of physical therapy that insurance wouldn't cover. Rich. It was Sophia who finally said what they'd both been thinking but were too afraid to voice. "We need to talk to a lawyer." Looked at her, seeing the exhaustion, the fear, the anger that mirrored his own. "You think we should sue?" "I think that police dog destroyed our daughter's life, and someone needs to be held accountable. I think we're drowning in medical bills with more coming every month. I think Emma will need care for years, maybe forever. And I think if we don't fight for her, nobody else will." Sophia's voice shook but grew stronger with each word. "This isn't about getting rich. This is about getting justice for our little girl." The next morning made the call to attorney, whose name had been given to them by a family friend. As he explained what happened to Emma, describing the attack and the aftermath, listened in silence. When he finished, she asked one simple question: "What do you want from this?" Looked at Sophia, at Emma sleeping fitfully on the couch with her bandaged arm cradled against her chest, and answered, "We want our daughter back. We want her to feel safe again. And we want to make sure this never happens to another child." "Then let's fight," said. The battle was just beginning. Law office occupied the 3rd floor of a modest building in downtown Austin, with large windows overlooking the bustling city streets below. She sat across from and Sophia 3 weeks after Emma's attack, a thick folder of documents spread across her mahogany desk. At 42 years old, had built her reputation on taking cases that other attorneys avoided, complex police misconduct cases, where the odds were stacked against ordinary citizens facing the full weight of governmental power. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this," began, her dark eyes moving between the exhausted parents. "Suing a police department is an uphill battle. They have unlimited resources, experienced attorneys, and something called qualified immunity that protects officers from personal liability in most situations. They'll fight us every step of the way." His jaw tightened. "So you're saying we can't win?" "I'm saying it won't be easy, but after reviewing everything, the medical records, the incident reports, the photos, I believe we have a strong case." Pulled out several documents. "There are multiple angles of negligence here. First, officer failed to maintain proper control of his K9 partner. Second, Rex was brought into a residential neighborhood without adequate safety protocols. Third, and this is crucial, I've been doing research on the Austin Police Department's K9 program." She slid a printed report across the desk. "In the past 5 years, there have been 8 documented incidents of APD police dogs biting civilians who were not suspects in crimes. 8. Emma is just the youngest victim. That suggests a systemic problem, not an isolated incident. Sophia leaned forward, hope flickering in her tired eyes. What does that mean for our case? It means we're not just going after Officer. We're going after the entire department for inadequate training, insufficient oversight, and a pattern of putting the public at risk. His voice grew stronger. We'll argue that they knew their K-9 program had problems and did nothing to fix them. That's called deliberate indifference, and it can pierce their immunity shield. And Sophia signed the retainer agreement that afternoon, agreed to take the case on contingency, meaning she wouldn't get paid unless they won, because she believed in it. More than that, she'd seen the photos of Emma's injuries, had read doctors' psychological evaluation, and felt the righteous anger that fueled her best work. Within a week, filed a civil lawsuit in County District Court. The complaint named Officer Jake, the Austin Police Department, Police Chief Robert Mendoza, and the City of Austin as defendants. The allegations were extensive: negligence, failure to properly train and supervise K-9 units, maintaining a dangerous animal in a residential area, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and violation of Emma's civil rights. The family sought compensation for past and future medical expenses, pain and suffering, emotional trauma, and punitive damages. The amount, $2.5 million. The local media exploded with the news. Within 24 hours, the story had spread beyond Austin to state and national outlets. Family sues after police dog mauls toddler read one headline. Parents seek millions in K-9 attack case, proclaimed another. The comment sections once again became of public opinion. The Austin Police Department issued a carefully worded statement. We are aware of the lawsuit filed by the family. While we cannot comment on ongoing litigation, we stand behind Officer and the dedicated members of our K-9 unit who risk their lives daily to keep our community safe. The incident involving the minor child is regrettable, but our preliminary investigation shows that proper protocols were followed. We will vigorously defend against these allegations in court. That statement, particularly the word regrettable and the emphasis on proper protocols, enraged Sophia. Regrettable, she said to that night, her voice shaking. Our daughter's life is destroyed and they call it regrettable, like someone forgot to return a library book. But worse was coming. 2 weeks after the lawsuit was filed, the city's legal team, led by Senior Attorney Blackwood, filed their response. It wasn't just a denial of the allegations. It was a full-scale attack on the family. The city's answer admitted that Rex had bitten Emma, but any wrongdoing. Then came the affirmative defenses that made blood boil. They claimed Emma had assumed the risk by approaching a clearly marked police K-9. They argued that her grandmother's negligent supervision was the proximate cause of her injuries. They asserted governmental immunity, stating that Officer was performing discretionary functions within the scope of his employment, and therefore the city couldn't be held liable. Most outrageously, they claimed that Emma's own actions, running toward Rex with arms raised, constituted contributory negligence that barred recovery. They're blaming a 3-year-old, Sophia screamed when called to explain the response. How can they legally blame a toddler for wanting to pet a dog? Because they can, said grimly. It's a standard defense tactic. Throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. They're trying to shift blame away from the department and onto Emma and your family. It's disgusting, but it's legal. The city also filed a motion to dismiss the case entirely, arguing that the court lacked jurisdiction, that the claims failed to state a cause of action, and that qualified immunity protected all the defendants. Judge, assigned to the case, scheduled a hearing for 6 weeks out. During those 6 weeks, the discovery process began, the grueling exchange of information between both sides. Requested massive amounts of documents, all records related to Rex's training and deployment, personnel files for Officer, policies and procedures for the K-9 unit, incident reports from previous dog bites, internal investigations, and budget allocations for K-9 training programs. The city fought every request. They claimed many documents were protected by law enforcement privilege, that others were confidential personnel records, that some requests were overly broad and unduly burdensome. Each objection required to file motions to compel, leading to additional hearings before judge. The legal fees, even though wasn't charging the family, began to mount in court costs and expert witness fees that the family had to cover. Took a second job doing night shifts at a warehouse. Sophia, still unable to return to work because Emma needed constant care, started a GoFundMe page to help with expenses. It raised $8,000, a blessing, but a drop in the ocean of their financial need. Meanwhile, Emma's condition wasn't improving the way everyone had hoped. 6 months after the attack, she still refused to go outside alone. Her physical therapy was progressing slowly. She'd regained some movement in her fingers but still couldn't make a fist or grip objects firmly with her right hand. Doctors said she would need another surgery when she turned 7 to address scarring that was limiting her range of motion. Psychological damage was even more profound. Doctors' reports, which would eventually become evidence in the case, painted a heartbreaking picture. Emma had regressed developmentally, losing vocabulary she'd acquired and reverting to more infantile speech patterns. She wet the bed nightly, something she hadn't done since she was 2. She refused to watch any television shows or read any books that featured dogs, even cartoon dogs. Once, at a grocery store, a service dog in a vest walked past their aisle. Emma had a complete meltdown, screaming, hyperventilating, and clinging to Sophia with such force that she left bruises. She's developed a severe specific phobia, doctor explained in a deposition that the city's attorneys attended. In clinical terms, we call it cynophobia, an extreme irrational fear of dogs. But in Emma's case, it's not irrational at all. Her fear is based on a very real, very traumatic experience. She's 3 years old and her brain has learned that dogs equal mortal danger. Unlearning that will take years of intensive therapy, and she may never fully overcome it. The city's attorney, Blackwood, pressed her during the deposition. "But isn't it true, doctor, that Emma wouldn't have been bitten if she hadn't run toward the dog?" "She's 3 years old," doctor replied, her voice icy with controlled anger. 3-year-olds don't understand that a dog can be dangerous. They see a dog, they want to pet it. That's normal child development. To blame her for age-appropriate behavior is absurd. But her grandmother should have been supervising her more closely, correct? Her grandmother was supervising her. She was on the porch, watching Emma play in a fenced yard. The dog came onto their property. What more should she have done? The depositions continued for months. Officer was deposed and the video footage showed a man carrying an unbearable burden of guilt. He answered questions mechanically, his voice flat. Yes, he'd received training on K-9 handling. Yes, he knew Rex was a powerful animal. No, he hadn't noticed any signs that Rex was stressed before the incident. When asked if he would do anything differently, his composure cracked. "I would give anything, to go back to that day and keep Rex on a shorter lead or leave him in the vehicle, or something. Anything to prevent what happened to that little girl." But guilt wasn't the same as legal liability, and Blackwood made sure to establish during his deposition that he had followed all department protocols, that he had no reason to believe Rex posed a danger, and that Emma's sudden movement had triggered an instinctive response in a trained police dog. The motion to dismiss hearing arrived in December, 8 months after the attack. Argued passionately before judge, citing case law, constitutional principles, and the well-documented problems with the APD K-9 program. Blackwood countered with equal passion, insisting that police officers must be able to do their jobs without fear of lawsuits every time something unfortunate happened. Judge took the matter under advisement. Her ruling came down 3 weeks later, just before Christmas. The motion to dismiss. The case would proceed to trial. It was a victory, but warned the family not to celebrate too much. "This just means we get to fight. It doesn't mean we've won. The city will appeal this ruling, which will delay everything. And even if we get to trial, convincing a jury to rule against a police department is incredibly difficult. As predicted, the city filed an appeal to the Third Court of Appeals. That process took another 7 months, during which time nothing else could move forward. The appellate court ultimately upheld Judge's decision, but by then, 18 months had passed since Emma's attack. Emma was now 5 years old. The scars on her arm had faded from angry red to pale pink, but they were still prominently visible. She'd had one additional surgery and would need at least 2 more as she grew. She'd started kindergarten but struggled socially. Her fear of dogs meant she couldn't participate in show and tell when other kids brought pets, couldn't go to birthday parties if the family had a dog, and had panic attacks during storybook readings that featured canine characters. The family's savings were gone. They'd borrowed money from relatives, maxed out credit cards, and were behind on their mortgage. Health was deteriorating from stress and overwork. Sophia had developed anxiety so severe that she required medication. Their marriage was strained to the breaking point by financial pressure and the trauma of watching their daughter suffer. The trial was scheduled for early summer, just over 2 years after the attack. Prepared meticulously, lining up expert witnesses including pediatric surgeons, animal behavior specialists, and police training consultants who would testify about the deficiencies in the APDK-9 program. She prepared Sophia for testimony, explaining that Blackwood would try to rattle them, would try to make them seem like money-hungry opportunists rather than desperate parents seeking justice. 6 weeks before trial, Judge called both attorneys into her chambers for a settlement conference. The city, perhaps recognizing the weakness of their position, offered $175,000 to settle, relayed the offer to her clients. "That won't even cover her medical bills," said flatly. "I know," replied. "I told them that. They said it was their final offer." "Then we go to trial," Sophia said, steel in her voice. "We've come this far, we're not giving up now." But none of them knew that Judge had one more unexpected card to play. One that would transform this case from a bitter legal battle into something unprecedented in American jurisprudence. The real story was about to begin. Judge sat in her chambers on a Tuesday evening, long after the courthouse had emptied. At 63 years old, with silver hair pulled back in her trademark bun and reading glasses perched on her nose, she'd presided over thousands of cases during her 30-year tenure on the bench. She'd seen the best and worst of human nature play out in her courtroom: brutal crimes, devastating divorces, corporate malfeasance, and bitter custody battles. But something about the case haunted her in a way few others had. She'd spent the last 3 hours reviewing every deposition, every medical record, every psychological evaluation. The photos of Emma's injuries made her wince. The transcripts of Dr. Sessions, where 5-year-old Emma described her nightmares in heartbreaking detail, brought tears to her eyes. But what kept drawing her attention was a particular exchange during Emma's own deposition, conducted very carefully with doctor present, as required for such a young child. Had asked Emma as gently as possible, "Do you remember the dog that hurt you?" Emma had nodded, her small hands twisting together anxiously. "Are you angry at the dog?" Emma had thought about this for a long moment, her face scrunched up in concentration. "I'm scared of him, but Dr. Sarah says maybe he didn't mean to hurt me. She says sometimes dogs get confused. Is that true?" Even at 5 years old, even after everything she'd suffered, Emma was trying to understand rather than simply hate. That question, that desire to comprehend what had happened to her, sparked something in Judge's mind. She'd recently attended a judicial conference where a colleague had presented research on restorative justice approaches in trauma cases. The traditional adversarial legal system, the research suggested, often failed to provide genuine healing for victims, especially children. What if there was another way? The idea was audacious, possibly unprecedented, and could blow up spectacularly. but hadn't become one of Texas's most respected judges by playing it safe. She picked up her phone and called directly. "It's Judge. I know it's late, but I have something I need to discuss with you. Can you come to my chambers tomorrow morning, before the city's attorneys arrive?" Surprised to receive a direct call from the judge, agreed immediately. When she arrived the next morning, got straight to the point. "I've been thinking about Emma," the judge began, "and about what justice actually means in a case like this. The city has offered an insulting settlement. If we go to trial, you might win big, or the jury might side with the police and your clients get nothing. Either way, Emma doesn't get what she really needs." "Which is?" asked, curious about where this was headed. "Understanding, closure, the ability to move forward without being destroyed by fear." Leaned forward. "I want to propose something highly unusual. I want to arrange for Emma to meet Rex again, in a completely controlled environment with doctor and animal behaviorist, officer, and both you and the city's attorneys present." His eyes widened. "Your Honor, with all respect, that's insane. Emma is terrified of dogs. Putting her in a room with the animal that mauled her could hurt her severely." "I know it sounds crazy," acknowledged, "but hear me out. I've been reading about exposure therapy for childhood trauma. When done correctly, carefully, and with proper professional support, confronting the source of trauma in a safe environment can be transformative. Emma spends every day running from her fear. What if we gave her a chance to face it on her terms, with everyone there to protect her?" "The family will never agree to this," said flatly. "Maybe not, but what if it could help Emma heal? What if it could give her power over her fear instead of letting the fear have power over her?" Pulled out several research papers. "I've been in contact with Dr. Robert, no relation to you, one of the country's leading animal behaviorists. He's reviewed Rex's records and believes there's important information that hasn't come out yet. Information that could change how everyone understands what happened that day." Was quiet for a long moment, her legal mind working through the implications. "If we do this and it goes badly, we could lose the case. The defense could argue we're exploiting Emma, putting her through unnecessary trauma. And if she has another breakdown, the jury might blame us." "I'm not ordering this. I'm proposing it," clarified. "Talk to your clients. Talk to doctor. If everyone involved, and I mean everyone including Emma herself, agrees, we'll proceed. If not, we forget I ever suggested it and move forward with trial." That afternoon, sat in the living room explaining Judge's proposal. The reaction was immediate and explosive. "Absolutely not. Are you out of your mind? That animal almost killed our daughter. Now you want to put her in a room with it." He was on his feet, packing furiously. "I thought you were on our side." "Please let me explain," began. "Explain what? How traumatizing our daughter even more will help our case?" "No, the answer is no. Case closed." But Sophia sat quietly on the couch, her expression thoughtful. "What does doctor think?" Pulled out her phone. "I called her before coming here. She says it's risky but potentially beneficial. She's willing to work with Emma to prepare her, but only if Emma herself wants to do it. Doctor was very clear this cannot be forced. It has to be Emma's choice." "She's 5 years old," protested. "She can't make a decision like this." "She's 5 years old and she's been living in terror for 2 years, Sophia said quietly. Maybe is right. Maybe Emma needs this." Stared at his wife in disbelief. "You're seriously considering this?" "I'm considering anything that might help our daughter," Sophia replied, her voice stronger now. "Look at her, really look at her. She hasn't played outside in 2 years. She has nightmares every single night. She's terrified of the world. What if this could help her?" "And what if it makes her worse?" shot back. "Then we'll deal with it, but we've tried everything else and nothing is working. She's not getting better, she's just existing. That's not living." The argument continued for over an hour. Finally, suggested bringing doctor to the house to explain the therapeutic rationale. When the psychologist arrived that evening, she spread out drawings Emma had made during their sessions, Pictures of enormous black dogs with red eyes and sharp teeth. Pictures of a little girl trapped in a cage. Pictures of darkness and fear. Emma's trauma has created a narrative in her mind where she's powerless and dogs are all-powerful monsters, Doctor explained. She can't separate Rex from all dogs, and she can't separate that terrible moment from the present. Every dog she sees becomes the dog that hurt her. Every moment outside becomes potentially the moment it happens again. How does putting her back with that dog change that? Asked, his anger giving way to exhaustion. Because right now the story ends with her being hurt. She has no control, no understanding, no resolution. If we can rewrite that story, if she can see Rex in a controlled environment, if she can understand that he's not a monster, if she can have the experience of being near him and nothing bad happening, it could break the cycle of fear. Could emphasized. You said could, not will. I won't lie to you. There are no guarantees in psychology, especially with trauma. But I believe this has a real chance of helping Emma. And here's what matters most. Emma wants to do it. Both parents froze. What? Sophia whispered. I talked to Emma today during our session. I explained in age-appropriate terms that there might be a chance for her to see the dog that hurt her in a safe place with me and her parents there. And do you know what she said? Doctor pulled out a piece of paper with Emma's careful 5-year-old handwriting. She said, I want to tell the doggy why I'm sad. Dr. Sarah says talking about feelings helps. Maybe the doggy needs to know my feelings too. Sophia's hand flew to her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. Stood frozen, staring at his daughter's words on the page. That night after Doctor left and Sophia sat outside Emma's bedroom door, listening to her sleep. For once, she wasn't having nightmares, just peaceful, even breathing. They held hands in the darkness, two parents facing an impossible choice. I'm terrified, Sophia admitted. But I'm more terrified of what happens if we don't try. She's disappearing into her fear. We're losing her bit by bit, and I don't know how to get her back. Was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke, his voice hoarse with emotion. When I was 8 years old, I was attacked by a neighbor's dog. Not as bad as what happened to Emma, but bad enough. I was terrified of dogs for years. My father told me I was being a coward, that I needed to just get over it, but my mother, she understood. She took me to visit her friend who had the gentlest old Labrador. Every week for months we'd visit. I didn't have to pet the dog, didn't have to do anything, just be in the same room. Eventually I started getting closer. Then one day I touched him. He licked my hand and I laughed. I actually laughed, and the fear broke. Sophia looked at her husband in surprise. You never told me that story. Because I was ashamed of being scared. But maybe, he paused, emotion choking his words, maybe that's Emma's problem too. She's carrying this fear alone, thinking it makes her weak. What if we could show her that facing fear is actually the bravest thing she could do? The next morning, they asked Emma to come sit with them. Sophia held their daughter's small hands and looked into her eyes, eyes that had seen too much pain, too much fear for someone so young. Baby, do you really want to see the dog that hurt you? Sophia asked gently. Emma nodded slowly. I'm really, really scared, but I have bad dreams every night about him. And in the dreams, I can't talk. I can't tell anyone how scared I am. Dr. Sarah says that if I see him when I'm awake, when I can talk, maybe the dreams will be different. You know you don't have to do this, said, his voice thick with emotion. Nobody will think you're scared if you say no. Emma looked at her father with a wisdom beyond her years. But I am scared. I'm scared all the time. Maybe if I tell the doggy I'm scared, I won't be scared quite so much anymore. Looked at Sophia, she nodded. He turned back to his daughter. Okay, we'll do this, but we do it together, and if at any time you want to stop, we stop. Deal. Deal, Emma said solemnly. Made the call to judge that afternoon. The family agrees, but we have conditions, extensive ones. Name them, replied. Over the next 3 weeks, the details were hammered out. Doctor would conduct intensive preparation sessions with Emma. Dr. Robert, the animal behaviorist, would evaluate Rex and work with Officer to ensure the dog was calm and receptive. The meeting would take place in a large conference room at the courthouse, with multiple exit routes. Emma could bring anything that made her feel safe. The session could be terminated instantly if Emma showed signs of distress. And crucially, everything that happened would be admissible in court. Both sides agreed to waive any objections. The city's attorneys initially objected to the entire plan, but when Officer heard about it, he personally called Blackwood. "If there's any chance this could help that little girl, we're doing it. I don't care what it means for the case." The meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday morning, 4 weeks before the trial date. As that day approached, Emma worked with Doctor on what she wanted to say, how she would feel, what she would do if she got scared. She drew pictures of the meeting, pictures that now showed the dog smaller, herself bigger, with her parents like protective giants on either side. The night before the meeting, Emma crawled into bed between her parents. "I need to tell you something important." "What is it, baby?" Sophia asked, stroking her daughter's hair. "I don't think the doggy is bad. I think he was confused and scared too. Dr. Sarah explained that sometimes when animals are scared, they bite. Like when I'm scared, I scream. It's not because I want to scare other people, I just can't help it." Felt his heart breaking and mending simultaneously. His 5-year-old daughter, who had every right to hate the creature that had hurt her, was instead trying to understand it. He pulled her close. "You're the bravest person I've ever known. You know that." "I'm not brave, I'm scared." "That's exactly what makes you brave. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the hard thing even though you're scared." The next morning would bring a confrontation that no one could fully prepare for, a moment that would test everyone involved and potentially transform how the justice system understood trauma, healing, and the remarkable capacity of children to teach adults about courage and forgiveness. Emma was about to face her nightmare, and in doing so, she would shock everyone with the power of a child's wisdom. The 3 weeks leading up to the courthouse meeting were filled with careful, methodical preparation that went far beyond what anyone had initially anticipated. Dr. Sarah transformed her therapy office into what she called a courage workshop, where Emma spent 3 sessions per week building the emotional tools she would need for the confrontation ahead. "Today, we're going to practice using our brave voice," Doctor said during one session, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside Emma. Between them lay an array of stuffed animals, dogs of various sizes, from a tiny Chihuahua plush to a large German Shepherd that made Emma's hands tremble when she first saw it. "My brave voice?" Emma asked, her eyes fixed on the large stuffed dog. "Yes, it's the voice you use when you need to tell someone something important, even when you're scared. Let's practice with the little dogs first." Doctor picked up the smallest stuffed animal. "What would you tell this doggy about how you feel?" Emma took a deep breath, exactly as Doctor had taught her. You hurt me, and that made me really sad and really scared." "That's perfect, Emma. Now can you tell me something else? Can you tell me what you want?" Emma thought for a moment, her small face scrunched in concentration. "I want to not be scared anymore. I want to go outside and play. I want to go to birthday parties even if there are dogs there." These sessions were emotionally exhausting. Sometimes Emma would shut down completely, retreating into silence. Other times she would cry or get angry or beg to go home. But Doctor never pushed too hard, always letting Emma set the pace, always validating her feelings while gently encouraging her toward the goal. Meanwhile, across town, another crucial preparation was Dr. Robert, a renowned animal behaviorist from Texas A&M University, had agreed to conduct a comprehensive evaluation of Rex. What he discovered would prove to be a bombshell that neither side had anticipated. Doctor spent 2 full days with Rex at the APDK-9 training facility, observing the dog in various situations, reviewing his complete training and deployment history, and interviewing his handler, Officer, along with the K-9 unit's training coordinator, Williams. On the third day, Doctor sat down with Officer in a small conference room, his findings spread across the table in neat folders. Looked haggard, having barely slept since agreeing to participate in the upcoming meeting. The guilt he carried was visible in every line of his face. "Officer, I need to show you something," Doctor began, pulling out a detailed chart. "This is Rex's deployment log for the 6 months leading up to the incident with Emma. Do you see anything unusual here?" Studied the chart, his brow furrowing. He was working a lot, but we all were. We've been short-staffed in the K-9 unit for over a year. "A lot is an understatement," Doctor said, his voice gentle but firm. In the month before the incident, Rex worked 27 out of 30 days. Many of those shifts were 10 to 12 hours long. Police dogs, like human officers, need rest and recovery time. They need downtime to decompress from the stress of their work. "I thought he was fine," said, his voice hollow. "He was still responsive to commands, still doing his job." "That's because Rex is an exceptionally well-trained, dedicated working dog. But look at these behavioral indicators I found in the incident reports you filed." Doctor pulled out several documents. 3 weeks before he bit Emma, you noted that Rex was slightly agitated during a routine traffic stop. 2 weeks before, you wrote that he barked excessively during a building search. 1 week before, you mentioned he required multiple commands to return to heel position. Do you remember these incidents? Nodded slowly, realization dawning on his face. "I remember, but I just thought. I don't know what I thought, that he was having off days maybe." "These weren't off days. These were warning signs of acute stress and fatigue." Doctor's expression was serious but not accusatory. "Rex was burning out, and nobody recognized it. Not you, not your supervisors, not the training staff. And that's because the APD K-9 program doesn't have protocols for monitoring canine stress levels or mandatory rest periods." Williams, who had been silent until now, spoke up from the corner where he'd been standing. "I've been telling the department for 3 years that we need better standards, but with budget cuts and staffing shortages, my concerns got pushed aside. We were just trying to keep up with demand." Doctor pulled out another document, a comparison study. "I've reviewed K-9 programs in 15 major cities across the country. Austin's program ranks among the worst in terms of officer-to-dog ratios, training hours for handlers in stress recognition, and mandatory rest protocols. Most departments require that K-9s work no more than 5 consecutive days and have regular evaluations by veterinary behaviorists. Austin has none of these safeguards." His hands were shaking. "So this was my fault. I worked Rex too hard. I didn't see the signs." "Officer, this was a systemic failure, not a personal one," Doctor said firmly. "You weren't trained to recognize these signs. You weren't given the resources or support to properly care for your partner. Yes, you were Rex's handler, but the department failed both of you. They put an overworked, stressed dog in situations where public safety was at risk, and they didn't give you the knowledge or tools to prevent what happened." The room fell silent as the weight of these revelations settled over everyone present. Finally, William spoke again. "This information, it changes the lawsuit, doesn't it?" "It should," Doctor agreed. "This isn't about a vicious dog or a negligent officer. This is about a police department that systematically overworked its K-9 units, failed to implement basic safety protocols, and ignored warning signs that tragedy was inevitable. Emma was the victim, but in some ways so was Rex." Doctor had one more evaluation to complete, examining Rex's current behavioral state and determining whether the dog could safely participate in the meeting with Emma. He spent another day working with Rex, conducting various stress tests, observing how the dog responded to children's voices, sudden movements, and unexpected situations. His conclusion was both reassuring and heartbreaking. Rex is a fundamentally sound, well-tempered dog who experienced a stress-induced behavioral crisis. In the 2 years since the incident, with reduced workload and proper rest, he's shown no aggressive tendencies whatsoever. He's actually shown what we call guilty behavior, a submissive, almost depressive demeanor that suggests he's carrying his own trauma from what happened. Dogs do experience guilt and remorse, though not in the same way humans do. Rex knows something bad happened, and it's affected him deeply. When received doctor's full report, she immediately called an emergency meeting with the family. She spread the findings across their kitchen table, watching as Sophia absorbed the information. "This changes everything," explained. "The city's entire defense is built on the idea that proper protocols were followed, but these findings show that their protocols were dangerously inadequate. We're not just talking about officer actions anymore. We're talking about a department that knowingly put the public at risk." Sophia's finger traced over the deployment logs, seeing the relentless schedule that Rex had been forced to maintain. So he was suffering too. According to Doctor, yes. He was overworked, overstressed, and exhibiting clear warning signs that were ignored. That doesn't excuse what happened to Emma, but it provides context. This wasn't a malicious attack. It was a preventable tragedy caused by systemic negligence. Was quiet for a long time, processing this new information. Finally, he spoke. "So the real villain in this story isn't the dog or even officer. It's the department that failed to protect anyone, not their own K-9 officers, not their dogs, and not the community they're supposed to serve." "Exactly," confirmed. "And that makes our case much stronger. We can show a pattern of institutional failure that directly led to Emma's injuries." When shared doctor's findings with the city's legal team, the response was swift and significant. Blackwood called an emergency meeting with Police Chief Robert Mendoza and the city's risk management department. The conversation, as later learned through discovery, was heated. "This is a disaster," Blackwood had reportedly said. "If this information comes out at trial, we're not just losing this case, we're opening ourselves up to liability in every previous K-9 incident. Every person who was ever bitten by an APD police dog could potentially sue, claiming systemic negligence." Chief Mendoza, according to the meeting minutes, had been furious, but his anger was directed at his own department's failures. How did we let this happen? How did nobody sound the alarm about these conditions? The answer, as the investigation revealed, was bureaucratic dysfunction. Budget reports showed that the K-9 unit had submitted requests for additional staff, enhanced training, and better protocols multiple times over the past 5 years. Each request had been tabled due to funding constraints. Warning signs had been documented, flagged, and then filed away without action. Williams, the K-9 training coordinator, provided a damning deposition about his attempts to improve conditions. "I sent memorandums. I gave presentations. I warned my supervisors that we were pushing these dogs too hard. I was told that everyone had to do more with less, that the K-9 unit wasn't special, that we'd make do with what we had. And now a little girl is for life because nobody wanted to listen." As the date of the courthouse meeting approached, both legal teams were armed with this explosive new information. The city's attorneys knew their defense was crumbling, knew her case was stronger than ever. But more importantly, everyone involved understood that this was bigger than a lawsuit. This was about exposing and fixing a broken system. The night before the meeting, Officer sat in his apartment with Rex curled up at his feet. The dog had been officially retired from active duty and was now's personal pet. They'd been through intensive rehabilitation training together, not to make Rex a working dog again, but to help both of them heal from their shared trauma. "Tomorrow we're going to see her," said quietly to the dog. "The little girl we hurt. I don't know what's going to happen, buddy. I don't know if she can ever forgive us, but we owe her the chance to say whatever she needs to say." Rex looked up at his former handler with those soulful brown eyes and could swear the dog understood. They'd been partners for 5 years, through countless calls and dangerous situations. They'd trusted each other completely, and that trust had been betrayed, not by each other but by a system that failed them both. Across town, Emma was also preparing for bed, clutching the stuffed German shepherd that doctor had given her during therapy. She'd named it Courage. "Do you think the real doggy will understand when I talk to him?" Emma asked as Sophia tucked her in. "I think he'll understand that you're very brave," Sophia replied, smoothing her daughter's dark curls. "And that's what matters most." Emma was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "I'm still scared." "I know, baby, but tomorrow you get to show your scared feeling who's boss. You get to be bigger than your fear." As Emma drifted off to sleep, Sophia sat by her bedside, tears streaming silently down her face. Tomorrow her daughter would face her greatest fear. Tomorrow the truth about what really happened that terrible day would be laid bare. Tomorrow healing, real, genuine healing, might finally begin. Or everything could fall apart. The only certainty was that nothing would ever be the same again. The county courthouse conference room had been transformed into something that resembled a therapy space more than a legal setting. The long mahogany table had been pushed against the wall, replaced by comfortable cushions and bean bags arranged in a wide semicircle. Soft lighting replaced the harsh fluorescence. A white noise machine hummed quietly in the corner to create a calming atmosphere. Multiple exit doors were clearly marked and unobstructed. This was Judge's courtroom, but today it would serve a purpose far beyond typical legal proceedings. By 9:00 a.m., everyone had assembled. Judge sat in her chair near the back wall, flanked by the court reporter whose fingers hovered over the stenography machine. Stood near one exit, her eyes constantly tracking Emma's position. Blackwood and his associate from the city's legal team occupied the opposite corner, their usual courtroom confidence notably absent. Dr. Sarah positioned herself strategically where Emma could see her easily, her calm presence an anchor point the child had come to rely on. Dr. Robert, the animal behaviorist, stood near the door where Rex would enter, ready to monitor every nuance of the dog's behavior. Williams, the K-9 training coordinator, waited beside him, Rex's shortened lead in his experienced hands. And then there was Officer Jake, sitting on the floor in the center of the room, his hands clasped tightly together, his face pale with anxiety and residual guilt. At 9:15 a.m., the family arrived, held Emma's right hand while Sophia held her left, forming a protective triangle around their daughter. Emma wore her favorite purple dress with butterflies on it, the same dress she'd been wearing when she started kindergarten, before the attack had stolen so much of her childhood joy. In her free hand, she clutched the stuffed German shepherd named Courage, its fur already worn from being held tightly during countless nightmares. Judge stood and approached the family with gentle respect. She knelt down to Emma's eye level. "Hello, Emma. My name is Judge. Thank you for being so brave to come here today. Do you remember why we're here?" Emma nodded, her voice small but clear. "I'm here to see the doggy that hurt me, and to tell him my feelings." "That's right. And I want you to know something very important. You are in control today. If you want to stop at any time for any reason, you just say the word stop, and everything stops immediately. Can you say that word for me?" "Stop," Emma whispered. "Louder, sweetheart. I need to hear that you can use your brave voice." Emma took a deep breath just as Doctor had taught her. "Stop." "Perfect, that's your superpower today. Use it whenever you need it." Judge smiled warmly and returned to her seat. Doctor approached Emma and knelt beside her. "Remember what we practiced. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. You can stay right here with your parents. The dog will be far away at first. We'll only get closer if you say it's okay, and Courage is right here with you." She touched the stuffed animal Emma held. Emma nodded, pressing closer to her mother's side. Sophia's hand trembled as she stroked her daughter's hair, fighting back tears. His jaw was clenched so tightly it ached, every muscle in his body coiled and ready to sweep his daughter up and run if anything went wrong. Judge nodded to Williams. "We're ready, please bring Rex in slowly." The door opened, and time seemed to stretch like taffy. Rex entered, his movements careful and controlled. Williams kept the lead short, the dog in perfect heel position. Rex wore a soft basket muzzle, not because Doctor believed he would bite, but because everyone agreed it would help Emma feel safer. The moment Emma saw Rex, her entire body went rigid. Her breathing became rapid and shallow. Her eyes went wide with terror, and a small, strangled sound escaped her throat. Sophia immediately moved to pick her up, but Doctor gently touched her arm. "Wait, let Emma tell us what she needs." For what felt like an eternity but was actually 45 seconds, Emma stood frozen, staring at the dog that had haunted her dreams for 2 years. Her small chest heaved with quick breaths. Tears began streaming down her face, though she made no sound. The stuffed animal in her hand was crushed against her chest like a shield. Rex, for his part, immediately exhibited the submissive behavior Doctor had documented. His ears flattened against his head, his tail tucked low. He lowered his body closer to the ground and turned his head away from Emma, displaying what animal behaviorists call calming signals, a dog's way of communicating non-aggression and peaceful intent. "Emma," Doctor said softly, "tell me what you're feeling right now. Use your words." Emma's voice came out as barely a whisper. "I'm really, really scared." "I know you are. That's okay. Being scared is okay. Do you want to stop?" Emma was quiet for a long moment, her eyes never leaving Rex. Then slowly she shook her head. "No, I want to stay, but I don't want him closer." "He won't come closer, I promise. He's going to stay right there unless you say it's okay for him to move. Is that all right?" Another small nod. Officer, still sitting on the floor about 15 feet from Emma, asked Judge for permission to speak. She nodded. His voice cracked as he addressed the little girl directly. "Emma, my name is Jake. I'm the police officer who was with Rex that day. I want you to know." He paused, swallowing hard. "I am so sorry for what happened to you. It was my job to keep everyone safe, including you, and I failed. I failed you so badly." Emma looked at, processing his words with the intense focus that children bring to important moments. "Why did your doggy bite me? I just wanted to pet him." His eyes filled with tears. "I know you did. You didn't do anything wrong, not one single thing, Rex. He was confused and scared and tired, and I didn't know how to help him. I should have been more careful. I should have kept him on a shorter leash. I should have done so many things differently." "Was he a bad doggy?" Emma asked, her voice tiny. Before could answer, Dr. Robert stepped forward, having received a nod of approval from Judge. "Emma, may I tell you something about Rex?" Emma looked at this new person with uncertainty, then at Doctor, who nodded encouragingly. "Okay." Doctor moved slowly to a position where Emma could see both him and Rex. "Rex isn't a bad dog. He's actually a very good dog who was going through a very hard time. Do you know how sometimes when you're really tired and someone surprises you, you might yell or cry even though you don't mean to?" Emma nodded slowly. "Well, dogs are similar. Rex had been working and working and working without enough rest. He was tired and stressed and confused. And when you ran toward him with your arms out, his tired, confused brain thought you might be trying to hurt Officer Jake. So his instinct, that means the automatic thing his body did without thinking, was to protect his partner. But he made a terrible mistake. He hurt you when you were just trying to be friendly." Emma listened intently, her young mind working to understand. "So, he didn't want to hurt me?" "No, sweetheart. He didn't want to hurt you at all. And I can tell you something else. Rex has been very sad since that day. Dogs don't understand things the same way people do, but they do understand when something bad has happened. Look at how he's sitting right now." All eyes turned to Rex. The German Shepherd remained in his submissive posture, his head down, occasionally glancing toward Emma and then quickly looking away. A soft whine emerged from behind the muzzle. "That's what we call a sorry behavior in dogs," Doctor explained. "He knows something bad happened and he feels bad about it." Emma stared at Rex for a long, quiet moment. Then something remarkable happened. She took one small step forward, away from her parents' protective circle. Both and Sophia tensed, but Doctor subtly signaled them to wait. "Emma, what are you doing?" Sophia asked, her voice tight with barely controlled fear. "I want to get a little closer," Emma said, her voice steadier now. "Just a little bit." She took another step, then another. She moved with the slow deliberation of someone approaching the edge of a cliff, terrified but determined. After each step she paused, taking those deep breaths Doctor had taught her, clutching courage against her chest. 10 feet from Rex, she stopped. The room was so quiet that everyone could hear the old clock on the wall ticking. Emma's legs were shaking. Fresh tears streamed down her face, but she stood her ground. "I can see you better now," she said to Rex, her voice quavering. "You're really big. You were so big that day, and you hurt me really, really bad." Rex's whine grew slightly louder, and he pressed himself even flatter against the floor. Emma took one more deep breath, and then she spoke words that no one in that room had anticipated, words that would fundamentally shift everything that came after. "You hurt me. You made me scared of everything. I can't play outside. I can't go to my friends' houses if they have dogs. I have bad dreams every single night. My arm doesn't work right anymore." Her voice grew stronger with each sentence. "You made my mommy and daddy cry all the time. You made everything bad." Openly sobbed, Sophia covered her mouth with her hand. Shoulders shook. But Emma wasn't finished. She lifted her chin, meeting Rex's eyes for the first time. "But Dr. Sarah taught me something. She says that everybody, even doggies, get scared sometimes. And when people and doggies are scared, sometimes they do things they don't mean to do. She says you were really, really tired and you got confused." Emma's next words came out carefully, as if she was still deciding whether she believed them herself. "So I have a question for you, doggy. Were you scared that day too? Did you make a mistake? Because if you did, then maybe we're both scared. And maybe that means we can both start to feel better." The room erupted in an emotion that was simultaneously heartbreak and hope. Here was a 5-year-old child, physically and emotionally, offering understanding to the creature that had devastated her life. She wasn't offering easy forgiveness. She was offering something more profound: the recognition of shared trauma, shared fear, and the possibility of shared healing. Rex responded with another low whine and inched forward slightly. His body language screaming submission, and what Doctor would later confirm looked remarkably like remorse. Emma lowered herself to sit cross-legged on the floor, still maintaining her distance but claiming her space with quiet dignity. She held courage in her lap and looked around the room at all the adults who were supposed to have answers, supposed to protect children, supposed to make the world safe. "I'm still really scared," she announced to everyone. "But I'm here. I came to see the doggy even though I was scared. Dr. Sarah says that's what brave means. Not being scared, but doing the hard thing even when you are scared." Judge wiped tears from her eyes, her professional composure completely abandoned. Felt her entire understanding of justice shifting. Even Blackwood, who had prepared to defend the city at all costs, found himself questioning everything he'd planned to argue at trial. Emma, not yet 6 years old, had just taught everyone in that courtroom a lesson about courage, trauma, accountability, and the complex nature of both forgiveness and justice. And the most extraordinary part was still to come. The silence in the conference room was profound, broken only by the soft sounds of muffled sobs and the gentle hum of the white noise machine. Emma sat cross-legged on the floor, her purple butterfly dress spread around her like petals, courage clutched in her lap, staring at Rex with an intensity that seemed impossible for someone so young. The German shepherd remained motionless, his brown eyes fixed on this tiny human who had somehow found the courage to face her nightmare. Williams, who had trained police dogs for over 15 years and thought he'd seen everything, watched Rex's body language with growing amazement. The dog's ears were pinned back, his tail tucked so tightly it was almost invisible, and his entire posture screamed what could only be interpreted as remorse. Then Rex did something that made Williams's breath catch. The dog released a soft, mournful whine that seemed to come from somewhere deep in his chest, a sound Williams had only heard a handful of times in his career, always from dogs experiencing profound distress or guilt. "Did you hear that?" Dr. Robert whispered to Williams, his eyes wide. "That's a distress vocalization. He's responding to her emotional state." Emma heard it too, her head tilted slightly, studying Rex with renewed curiosity. Why is he making that sound? Doctor carefully moved closer to Emma, staying low and non-threatening. "That sound means he's sad and upset. Dogs can't say I'm sorry with words like people can, but they show it with their bodies and sounds. Right now, Rex is showing every sign that he understands something bad happened and that he feels badly about it." Emma processed this information with visible concentration. "He's sad too." "Yes, sweetheart. He's been sad for a long time." Officer, still sitting on the floor with tears streaming down his face, asked Judge again for permission to speak. When she nodded, he looked directly at Emma, his voice breaking with emotion. "Emma, I need to tell you something, and I need you to know that this is the absolute truth. What happened to you that day was not your fault, not even a little bit. You were a 3-year-old little girl who saw a dog and wanted to pet it. That's what kids do. That's what they're supposed to do. You didn't do anything wrong." He paused, struggling to continue. "But I did. I was Rex's handler, his partner, and it was my job to take care of him and keep everyone around us safe. I didn't see that he was tired and stressed. I didn't recognize the warning signs. I should have had him on a shorter lead. I should have been paying more attention. This happened because I failed, not because Rex is a bad dog, and definitely, absolutely not because you did anything wrong." Emma's young face showed the effort of processing this information. "So it was your fault?" Nodded, more tears falling. "Yes, it was my fault. I'm the adult. I'm the trained professional. I should have prevented this." But then something unexpected happened. Emma shook her head slowly. "Dr. Sarah says that sometimes bad things happen because lots of things go wrong together, not just one thing. She showed me a picture with dominoes. When one falls, it makes the others fall too." She turned to look then at the city's attorneys, then at Judge. "So was it just Officer Jake's fault, or did other people make mistakes too?" The question hung in the air like a revelation. Here was a child, barely old enough to read, articulating what the lawyers had spent months fighting about, the question of systemic responsibility versus individual blame. Judge leaned forward. "Emma, that's a very smart question. Would you like to know what we've learned?" Emma nodded eagerly. Dr. Robert took over, explaining in language a 5-year-old could understand. "Emma, we discovered that Rex was working almost every single day for weeks and weeks. Imagine if you had to do homework and chores and activities every single day without any breaks to play or rest. How would you feel?" "Really tired and grumpy," Emma answered immediately. "Exactly. That's how Rex felt. And the people who were supposed to make sure he got breaks, they didn't do that. They made him work and work and work. So when that day came, Rex was so tired and so stressed that his brain wasn't working right. Officer Jake didn't know Rex was that tired because nobody taught him how to tell when a dog needs a break." Emma's eyes widened. "So the people who made Rex work too much, they made the mistake too?" "Yes," Doctor confirmed. "A very big mistake." Sophia, who had been watching her daughter with a mixture of pride and protective anxiety, suddenly spoke up. "Emma, baby, can I ask you something? When you drew pictures with Dr. Sarah about what happened, you always drew the dog very big and yourself very small. How does Rex look to you now?" Emma studied Rex for a long moment. "He still looks big, but Not as big as in my dreams. In my dreams, he's like a monster with red eyes and teeth like knives. But right now, he looks like a regular dog who's sad. She paused, then added something that made every adult in the room catch their breath. And I look bigger than I did that day. That day I was really small and didn't understand anything. But now I'm 5 and I understand more. Dr. Sarah says understanding things makes us bigger inside. Blackwood, the city's lead attorney, stood abruptly. His face was flushed, and his hands trembled slightly as he addressed Judge. Your Honor, may I request a 15-minute recess? The city's legal team needs to confer. Judge granted the request. As the attorney stepped out, Emma remained on the floor, her gaze never leaving Rex. After a moment, she asked quietly, "Can I show the doggy something?" Doctor immediately moved closer. "What do you want to show him?" Emma reached into the small purple backpack Sophia had brought and pulled out a piece of paper, one of the drawings she'd made in therapy. This one was different from the nightmare images. It showed a little girl and a dog with a rainbow arcing between them. "I made this picture," Emma explained to the room. "Dr. Sarah and I made it together. The rainbow is special. It's called a bridge. She says bridges help people meet in the middle when they're far apart. The little girl is me and the dog is Rex. We're both on opposite sides, but the rainbow connects us." She held up the picture so Rex could see it, though of course the dog couldn't understand the symbolic meaning. But something about Emma's gesture, her soft voice, her open body language made Rex shift slightly. His tail uncurled just a fraction. His ears lifted almost imperceptibly. "I drew us both with sad faces," Emma continued, "because we're both sad about what happened. But I also drew Sun in the corner, see? Because Dr. Sarah says that even when things are really bad, there can be good things too. Like, what happened was really bad, but it made me meet Dr. Sarah and she's really nice. And it made my mommy and daddy spend more time with me. And it made me learn about being brave." Officer could barely breathe. This child, this extraordinary child, was finding meaning in her trauma, was constructing a narrative that included both pain and growth. She was doing the psychological work that most adults never managed. "Emma," he said softly, "may I ask you a question?" She nodded. "What would you want to happen now? If you could decide what happens to Rex and to me, what would you choose?" Emma thought carefully, her face scrunched in concentration. "Well, I don't want Rex to be put down. That means killed, right?" "Yes," confirmed. "Then no, I don't want that. He made a mistake, but Dr. Sarah says mistakes don't mean someone or some doggy should die. That wouldn't make my arm better or my bad dreams go away. It would just make more sadness." She turned to look at her parents. "Is that okay, that I don't want the doggy to die?" Sophia exchanged a look of profound emotion, nodded, unable to speak. Sophia managed to say, "Yes, baby, that's okay. That's very kind of you." "And Officer Jake," Emma continued, turning back to, "I think you should help other police officers learn about when doggies are too tired, so this doesn't happen to other kids, because I don't want another little girl to have scars like mine or bad dreams like mine." At that moment, the door opened and Blackwood returned with his legal team. His expression was completely transformed from the confident, aggressive attorney who had fought this case for nearly 2 years. He looked humbled, perhaps even ashamed. "Your Honor," he addressed Judge, "the city of Austin would like to make a statement." Judge gestured for him to proceed. Blackwood cleared his throat. After witnessing what we've just seen, after hearing Emma's remarkable courage and wisdom, the city can no longer in good conscience continue to defend our actions. We have been confronted with irrefutable evidence of our systemic failures, and more importantly, we have been shown by a 5-year-old child what accountability and compassion actually look like. He turned to face the family directly. "Mr. and Mrs. Emma, the city of Austin offers its most sincere and complete apology. Our K-9 program failed Rex, failed Officer, and most critically, failed your family and failed Emma. We maintained inadequate protocols, ignored warning signs, and then attempted to shift blame rather than accept responsibility. That was wrong. Emma listened intently as Blackwood continued. We would like to propose a comprehensive settlement that includes full compensation for all medical expenses, past, present, and future, as well as recognition of the pain and suffering this has caused. But more than that, we want to commit to completely overhauling our K-9 program to ensure this never happens again. Stood, her eyes bright with emotion. The family will need time to consider any proposal, but I think I can speak for them when I say that what they've always wanted was acknowledgement, accountability, and change. It appears you're finally offering all three. Emma raised her hand like she was in school. Everyone turned to her. I have a question. If you change the program, does that mean other doggies won't have to work so hard? Will they get to rest more? Blackwood nodded, a slight smile on his face despite the gravity of the situation. Yes, Emma, that's exactly what it means. Good, Emma said firmly, because Rex was tired and that's why he got confused. Dogs should get to rest and play, not just work all the time. She looked at Rex again, and this time something had shifted. The terror that had marked her expression when she first entered the room had softened into something more complex, not forgiveness exactly, but understanding, recognition, acknowledgement of shared pain. I'm still scared of you, Emma told Rex honestly. I think I'm going to be scared for a long time, but I don't hate you. Dr. Sarah says that's okay, that I can be scared and still not hate you. And maybe someday, if you get to rest and be a regular dog instead of a police dog, maybe you'll be happy. And maybe that will make me a little bit happy too. The German Shepherd, as if responding to the shift in Emma's energy, lifted his head slightly. His tail gave the smallest wag, barely perceptible, but there. Dr. Robert noted it immediately, recognizing it as a sign that Rex was beginning to relax, to sense that the threatening situation was resolving. Officer looked at Emma with an expression of wonder and gratitude. You're teaching us all something important, Emma. You're teaching us that justice doesn't have to be about punishment alone. It can be about understanding and making things better. Emma smiled for the first time since entering the room, a small, tentative smile, but genuine. Dr. Sarah says the world needs more people who try to understand instead of just being mad, so I'm practicing. In that moment, everyone in the courthouse conference room understood that they were witnessing something extraordinary. This wasn't just a legal proceeding anymore. It was a lesson in humanity, delivered by the smallest, bravest person in the room. The healing had truly begun. 3 weeks after the extraordinary courthouse meeting, Judge reconvened all parties for the formal settlement hearing. The courtroom was packed with media representatives, community members, and law enforcement officials from across Texas who had heard about the case. Word had spread about the remarkable confrontation between Emma and Rex, and everyone wanted to witness how this unprecedented situation would resolve. Emma sat between her parents in the front row, wearing a yellow dress decorated with sunflowers. Her right arm, though still, had improved considerably with ongoing physical therapy. More significantly, the nightmares had decreased from every night to just a few times a week, a dramatic improvement that Dr. Sarah attributed directly to Emma's courthouse experience. The little girl was still wary of dogs, still anxious in certain situations, but something fundamental had shifted. She had faced her fear and survived. That knowledge was transforming her. Judge called the courtroom to order, her voice carrying the weight of someone who understood the historical significance of this moment. We are here today to finalize a settlement agreement that I believe will serve as a model for how our justice system can address both accountability and healing. Mr. Blackwood, please present the city's formal offer. Blackwood stood, his demeanor vastly different from the aggressive attorney who had initially fought the family. The experience of watching Emma's courage had clearly affected him deeply. He carried a thick document to the podium, but before reading from it, he turned to face the family directly. Before I outline the specific terms, I want to state clearly and publicly what I said in the conference room. The city of Austin failed Emma, failed her family, and failed its responsibility to protect its citizens. We maintained a K-9 program with dangerous inadequacies, ignored warning signs, and then attempted to deflect responsibility. For that, we are profoundly sorry. He took a deep breath and continued. The city offers the following comprehensive settlement. First, monetary compensation in the amount of $850,000, structured to provide for Emma's immediate medical needs, ongoing therapy, future surgeries, and educational expenses. This amount is not contingent on any admission of liability. We are admitting liability fully and completely. A murmur ran through the courtroom. This was an unusually large settlement for a municipality, and the unconditional admission of fault was even more remarkable. Second, Blackwood continued, the city commits to a complete overhaul of the Austin Police Department K-9 program, with changes to be implemented within 90 days and independently monitored for 5 years. Specific reforms include mandatory stress recognition training for all K-9 handlers, required continuing education quarterly, implementation of strict work-hour limitations for police dogs with mandatory rest periods, regular behavioral assessments by certified veterinary behaviorists, and the creation of a new position, Director of K-9 Welfare, with authority to remove any dog from active duty if health or behavioral concerns are identified. Emma listened carefully, leaning over to whisper to her mother, "What does that mean?" Sophia whispered back, "It means they're going to make sure police dogs get treated better, so they don't get too tired and confused like Rex did." Emma nodded solemnly, satisfied with this answer. Blackwood wasn't finished. Third, Officer Jake, who has voluntarily resigned from active duty, will be appointed as the APD's lead K-9 training consultant. He will develop and deliver training programs for police departments across Texas, focusing on recognizing canine stress indicators and preventing the circumstances that led to this tragedy. His first-hand experience and his demonstrated commitment to ensuring this never happens again make him uniquely qualified for this role. Officer, sitting in the second row, visibly startled at this announcement. He had expected to be cast aside, blamed, forgotten. Instead, the city was offering him a chance to transform his guilt into purpose, his mistake into mission. Tears welled in his eyes as he nodded acceptance. Fourth, Blackwood continued, the city will establish the Emma Child Safety Fund, with an initial contribution of $100,000 and ongoing annual funding, to support programs that educate children about safe interactions with working animals, and to provide therapy resources for children who have experienced animal-related trauma. Emma perked up at hearing her name. "There's going to be something named after me." Squeezed his daughter's hand. "Yes, something that will help other children stay safe." Fifth, and finally, Blackwood concluded, the city will commission an independent review of all APD K-9 incidents from the past decade, with findings to be made public and used to further improve policies. We are also offering to share our reformed protocols freely with any law enforcement agency in the country that requests them. Judge turned to, "Ms., has your client reviewed and accepted these terms?" Stood, her voice steady but emotional. "Your Honor, the family has reviewed the settlement offer extensively. While no amount of money can restore Emma's sense of security or erase the trauma she's experienced, this settlement provides genuine accountability and, more importantly, systemic change that will protect countless others. The family accepts the city's offer. Mr. and Mrs., do you wish to make a statement?" And Sophia had prepared remarks, but when the moment came, found his carefully written words inadequate. He stood slowly, his construction worker hands trembling slightly. 2 years ago, our daughter's life was nearly destroyed. We've spent every day since then fighting for her recovery, fighting for answers, fighting for justice. Today, we finally have all three." His voice cracked with emotion. "But the real hero in this story isn't me or my wife or even our amazing lawyer. It's Emma. Our 5-year-old daughter taught everyone in this courtroom, everyone in this city, what real courage looks like. She showed us that justice isn't just about punishment. It's about understanding, accountability, and making sure the same mistake never happens again." He looked at Officer. "Jake is not a villain. He's a good man who was set up to fail by a broken system. What happened to Emma was tragic, but destroying Officer's life wouldn't have healed our daughter. Instead, he gets to spend his career making sure no other child suffers what Emma suffered. That's justice." Sophia stood beside her husband, adding, "We also want to acknowledge Rex. He was a victim too, a victim of overwork, inadequate oversight, and a system that valued productivity over. We're grateful that he's been retired and is now living as a family pet with Officer, where he can finally rest and recover from his own trauma." Judge smiled, genuine warmth in her expression. "Emma, would you like to say anything?" Every eye in the courtroom turned to the small girl in the yellow sunflower dress. Emma looked at her parents, who nodded encouragement. She stood on her chair so people could see her better, and spoke in her clear, high-pitched voice that somehow filled the entire room. "I'm still scared of dogs sometimes. My arm still hurts sometimes. I still have bad dreams sometimes. But Dr. Sarah taught me that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you keep going even when you are scared. So I'm going to keep going." She paused, looking around at all the adults watching her. "And I want to say thank you to Judge for letting me meet Rex. I was really scared, but it helped me understand what happened. Now when I have bad dreams, I can remember that Rex wasn't a monster. He was just a confused, tired doggy who made a really big mistake." Emma turned to look at Officer. "Officer Jake, I'm glad you're going to teach other police officers. Because what happened to me was really bad, but if you can stop it from happening to even one other kid, then maybe something good came from something bad. Dr. Sarah says that's called finding meaning, and it helps us heal." There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Hardened reporters wiped tears. Police officers sat with heads bowed, several of them thinking about their own K-9 partners and wondering if they'd been missing warning signs. Even Judge had to pause to compose herself before continuing. "This court accepts and approves the settlement as presented, but I want to add something to the official record." Judge looked directly at Emma. "In 30 years on the bench, I have never witnessed anything quite like what I've seen in this case. Emma, at 5 years old, has demonstrated a level of courage, compassion, and wisdom that most adults never achieve. You have transformed what could have been a bitter legal battle focused solely on blame and punishment into something far more meaningful, a genuine opportunity for healing and systemic change." She turned to address the full courtroom. "Let this case be a lesson to every judge, every attorney, every law enforcement agency, and every citizen. True justice requires both accountability and compassion. It requires acknowledging harm while also understanding context. It requires both consequences for failures and opportunities for redemption. Emma has shown us the path forward. The question is whether we're brave enough to follow." Judge struck her gavel. "This case is concluded. Court is adjourned." But the story was far from over. In the months that followed, the changes rippled outward like waves from a stone dropped in still water. The Austin Police Department implemented every promised reform ahead of schedule, with Williams promoted to Director of K-9 Welfare as promised. Within the first 6 months, Williams identified 3 police dogs showing signs of dangerous stress levels and removed them from active duty before any incidents occurred. The handlers, having received enhanced training, recognized the signs and supported the decisions. Officer Jake discovered unexpected purpose in his new role. He traveled to police departments across Texas, then across the nation, delivering training programs he developed with Williams and Dr. Robert. His presentations always included Emma's story, told with the family's permission, and the impact was profound. Within 18 months, 15 major cities had reformed their K-9 programs based on the Austin model, as it became known. Rex himself experienced a transformation. Retired from police work, he lived within a quiet house with a large backyard. The constant pressure, the endless deployments, the stress that had built to a breaking point, all of it was gone. Under doctors' guidance, Rex underwent rehabilitation training, and after 8 months he was certified as a therapy dog for children with anxiety disorders. The first child Rex worked with, at its request and with the family's blessing, was Emma herself. It happened on a Saturday morning at doctor's office, 6 months after the settlement. Emma arrived clutching courage, her stuffed German shepherd, her parents close beside her. Rex was there wearing a vest that identified him as a therapy dog. "Hi, Rex," Emma said quietly, staying near the door. "I heard you have a new job now. You help kids who are scared like me." Rex, responding to subtle hand signals, remained perfectly still and calm. Over the next hour, with Doctor facilitating, Emma gradually moved closer. By the end of the session, she was sitting 5 feet from Rex, telling him about her kindergarten class and the drawing she'd made of him with a rainbow. "You're not scary right now," Emma observed. "You're just peaceful." It would take many more sessions before Emma could touch Rex, and even then it was brief and required tremendous courage. But that wasn't the goal. The goal was to help Emma reclaim her power, to transform from a victim of circumstance into a survivor who controlled her own narrative. The Emma Child Safety Fund flourished, providing educational programs in schools across Austin and expanding to other cities. Children learned about respecting working animals, recognizing stress signals in dogs, and staying safe around unfamiliar animals. The fund also provided free therapy for families dealing with animal-related trauma, removing the financial barriers that had nearly bankrupted the family. Emma herself became, somewhat reluctantly, a minor celebrity. News outlets across the country covered her story. She received letters from children and adults thanking her for her courage. A children's book author asked permission to write Emma's story, with all proceeds going to the safety fund. Sophia and carefully shielded their daughter from too much attention, but they allowed some media appearances, recognizing that Emma's story had power to create change. On the 2nd anniversary of the settlement, the family, officer, Rex, and judge gathered for the dedication of a small memorial garden at the Austin courthouse. A bronze plaque read, "The Emma Garden of Understanding," dedicated to the belief that justice serves healing, that courage comes in small packages, and that even from tragedy, hope can grow. Emma, now 7 years old and thriving in 2nd grade, stood before the crowd gathered for the dedication. Her right arm, though still and with limited mobility, had improved significantly. She'd 2 additional surgeries and would need more, but she'd regained enough function to write, draw, and do most activities her classmates did. "When I was 3, something really scary and bad happened to me," Emma said, reading from notes she'd written herself. "For a long time I let that bad thing make me small and scared, but then I learned that I could choose to be bigger than my fear. I learned that understanding is stronger than hate. I learned that mistakes, even really, really big mistakes, don't have to be the end of the story. They can be the beginning of something better." She looked at Officer and Rex, both sitting in the front row. Officer Jake made a mistake. The people who made Rex work too hard made a mistake. And maybe I made a little mistake too, running toward a dog I didn't know. But we all learned from our mistakes. And now, because of what happened, other kids are safer. Other doggies are treated better. Other police officers know more about taking care of their partners. Emma smiled, that brave, beautiful smile that had captivated a nation. "So I guess what I want to say is, bad things happen sometimes. Really bad things. But we get to choose what happens next. We can choose anger or we can choose understanding. We can choose to stay victims, or we can choose to become survivors who make the world better. I choose the second one. As applause filled the courthouse garden, Emma, 7 years old, survivor, teacher, symbol of resilience, stood tall, proving that sometimes the smallest voices carry the most powerful truths, and that justice, when infused with compassion and courage, can indeed change the world. The little girl who once ran toward a dog with open arms and innocent joy had transformed her tragedy into a legacy of safety, understanding, and hope that would protect children and animals for generations to come. And in doing so, she had shown everyone watching what it truly meant to be brave. The end.